Hi folks, that's 3 o'clock my time. I think we'll just hold on 2 more seconds just to let any late joiners come, 2 more minutes, and then we'll kick off. Thanks. Hi folks, welcome for joining. We're just going to hold on 1 more minute and then kick off at 2 minutes past 3 or 2 minutes past the hour, wherever you are. Great, okay, so let's call to order. Thanks so much everyone for joining us. My name is Ruth Hamilton and I'm chairing this particular meeting at the request of Rasha Mustafa, who is looking after this part of the world, and this meeting has been timed to be hopefully reasonably convenient for lots of you. So we have an agenda. I'm guessing you all have sight of that because it will be on the invitation, but I'll just pop the link to that into the chat for everyone to connect to, and hopefully you'll see it there. Nice to see some familiar faces from electrophysiology. Hi Hoover, hi Quentin, and lots of other familiar faces here. Denise, Gemma, Andreas, and others. So we've welcomed, and I think in our absence, lots of things go on. Specifically on the 18th of January, the committee had its meeting, and Matt, I wondered if you would be able to just give everyone here a quick update on what was discussed at the committee meeting.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Ruth. So yeah, this was the first actual committee meeting. It was only really as of the last meeting we had finally got an initial kind of setup committee. So we have well, representatives from the different regions. So Russia is here with us, the Russian Mustafa. Are you back in Finland now, or are you in Egypt at the moment?
Currently, I'm in Finland, back in
Finland now, yeah. Sorry?
On the 18th, I was in Egypt, but just
right, so we met the committee meeting just a few days ago. And Robert Alexander is representing the Americas region. Amanda Douglas is representing the Australasia region. And then Siwan Chan is basically working on outreach and communications type stuff. So this was the first time we'd actually met as a group to hopefully handle more of the administrative type stuff, so that the main meetings that we're having here can be focused more on the business of actually developing standards and protocols for clinical eye tracking procedures. So that's the aim of that. A few things were discussed. So we basically, it's a chance for us all to meet each other. These meetings, by the way, are also recorded, and they're also on the website, so you can see those on the website as well. We are moving towards getting a proper website so that we can actually be found on Google and hopefully then extend the reach a bit further. Let me just bring up we discussed that. Yeah, so one of the things we looked at was ways to increase membership, ways to increase the outreach. So we're actually making sure we're reaching people who are doing clinical eye tracking. We were looking at getting funding for covering what are currently very minor costs. So there are a couple of grant schemes. One was NIH and another one from a group called Improved Diagnosis, which would provide a few thousand if we needed to get things up and running. But at the moment, our costs are very low. We did discuss the possibility of moving to a membership fee model, but at the moment, I think it's probably a bit early for that. But we are discussing whether that might be appropriate at some point. And one of the other things which we discussed in that meeting was providing support for the survey study. So one of the things on today's agenda is really to discuss how we can actually come together to help that survey study happen. Just looking through the other notes we had here. That was pretty much it, really. It was mostly just about us having a chance to meet up. We'll make sure that future meeting invites go out with a calendar link as well, and there's a bit more publicity around them as well, so we can hopefully bring more people to the table each time. So that's really it from me. Just to say thank you to Russia for taking on the kind of Europe and Africa region, and Ruth for everything you've done so far for us. Which is Ruth is the president of ISCET, and so the model of ISCET has been very useful to us as we've kind of started to create the ISCET organization. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, Matt. Are there any questions to the committee based on Matt's quick run through there, or any issues that you think the committee might want to raise or meet? Yeah. Okay, good. So let's move on then with the agenda. And I think that the major pressing thing that we really want to talk about is our survey. So you'll know that there is a collaborative document, which is also, I'm just going to put the link to that in. And so far that has been collating, the principal things it's trying to collate is, if we were to survey everybody who's currently doing eye tracking, then please, what questions should we be asking them? We probably also need to decide what format the question goes in, and who should we be circulating it to. We've got a list of clinical disciplines, representative bodies, and lots of other groups, industry stakeholders, regulatory bodies, etc. So type away in that document, because all contributions are really valuable. We had also talked about some formats for this survey to be taken, and rather than sort of growing arms and legs, I think it's probably useful just to remind ourselves that the principal purpose of the survey is to decide what is the first standard that ISCET should write. Sorry if that's a slip. So what should the first standard ISCET writes be? So it's really nice to think of a survey, because there's a gazillion things you want to know as a starting up a community, but perhaps a series of surveys is better served than one which just tries to capture everything. Just thinking about that. And then the other idea that had been mooted, and again, I don't think a final decision has been made, but that's very much about, do we undertake this survey as an academic exercise for publication, which then starts having issues of ethics and also things taking quite a lot longer, or do we want a more pragmatic survey that we can very quickly get a snapshot from the field and understand where best to direct the next lot of work? Gemma, I know that you had very nicely offered to take the lead on this, not trying to put you on the spot, but are there any updates from your perspective about, or any additional thoughts about how we go ahead with this, or shall we get straight into the nitty-gritty of the questions and so forth?
Thanks, Ruth. All to say really is that I had a brief discussion at my institution. So I'm based at a university in the UK. And my questions were about ethics and kind of consent, and thinking about, if we did want to publish it, it would need kind of ethical approval and consent from people that they understand, if they're going to complete it, that their responses would be reported anonymously in a manuscript, if that's what we aimed. So I do think that's probably worthy of discussion up front. I'm happy to put it through the University of Sheffield ethics procedure. When I had conversations about that, they didn't anticipate any issues with that. But again, it would be about thinking, what data are you going to collect and where is it going to be stored and for how long? They were kind of the fundamental issues, but it just seemed a bit of a shame for us to approach it as a pragmatic thing and then later down the line wish that we'd actually gained consent, because actually the results would inform either the literature or inform others more broadly, or be searchable or be kind of referenceable by others. So I do think that is something to try and establish up front.
I guess that, yeah. So Gemma, I just wanted to ask the question. about when you discussed with the ethics board, was there any concerns raised about it being run in multiple countries? And one of the things we discussed at the committee meeting was about whether that would require ethical approval in every country in which it is intended to be run, which would be quite an undertaking. Did they indicate any issues with that?
No, they saw it mainly as who's going to hold the results, who's going to hold the data, what's that data going to include, and for how long would it be stored. So they didn't anticipate it needing ethical approval from every individual site. It was more who's going to hold the results and the data, so that they would anticipate it would just need ethical approval from the place that's where are those results going to. That was their main thing.
Thanks, Gemma. One issue maybe worth just raising before I come to you, Denise, thanks. It is, of course, possible for survey results, anonymous survey results, to be publicly available and searchable, and the data to be available via DOI on Mendeley or other things like that. So even if the publication route wasn't a decision, lots of what might be useful for others could still be accessible, I guess. Denise?
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm currently involved in multiple studies involving surveys of health professionals, and you do need ethics, but the ethics, as Gemma said, is mainly about who holds the data. So which university or institution is hosting the study, and that therefore holding that data, even if it's anonymized data, because there are few enough people kind of working within a very kind of niche specialty in different centres. You could possibly identify people from their responses and where they say they're from, and you just need to be a little bit transparent about that. You also need ethics to even try and recruit people from mailing lists to your survey, to complete your survey. So to be able to ask various bodies to distribute your survey via their mailing lists requires ethics. It's a little bit tedious, but not, it shouldn't be a barrier for us doing the research. That we can get, nobody's going to say no, I don't think, as long as we're transparent about what we're doing and how we're holding the data.
Great, Denise, that sounds like you've just got yourself a job on the subcommittee taking together the survey with your expertise.
Well, I can advise it. I don't think I have the time to design the survey or stuff like that. So, but I can certainly advise you on my experience. And one good thing that I've found is RedCap is a particularly good sort of facility for holding or hosting online surveys, and you can distribute the link. It's very stable, and it can hold anonymized data, and you can also do online consent using RedCap, and participants will be redirected from the consent directly to the survey, so it can work really seamlessly.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice. So maybe worth thinking about, and maybe as we have this conversation, it's worth everybody thinking about whether they have got expertise, or maybe even more importantly, time that they could offer to support the committee taking forward the survey. Okay.
Might be sorry.
Yeah, no, go.
Might be something, enthusiastic medical student or trainee or somebody like that might be able to take on.
Yeah, I agree. It's exactly the sort of work that a trainee, clinical scientist trainee, whatever, something of that sort might be able to do a lot of the legwork. Okay, is it worth taking a detailed look at the questions that we have? Has everyone got access to the collaborative document? I can see lots of anonymous cheetahs and armadillos and things. Yep.
I have a question.
Yep.
So for the eye tracking, so we're only talking about like following the pointing direction of the eye. We aren't worried about a pupil response. Is that true, or
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Matt, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, you're right. When so prior to this, there was a separate group that were looking at eye tracking methods reporting, and at that point, we were trying to think, what on earth is eye tracking? Where does the end of this, where does it get defined and finished? I think at the moment, the broad definition is simply clinical uses of eye trackers. So pupillography, yeah, that's kind of a different thing. And it's not something we haven't actually discussed as a group, whether that would fall under a clinical use of an eye tracker if you're simply using an eye tracker for pupil data. But I appreciate that some people will be doing that. But primarily, so far, the focus has been on eye tracking data, people who are using that clinically. So, but that could include saccades, anti-saccades, any manner of things.
Right. So right, there's a lot of use in advertising for eye trackers, right? To see, what people are actually looking at on ads, non-clinical, of course. And then there's a lot of inner ear disorders, where there's a lot of eye tracking to look for on a tilt table test. Can you induce nystagmus due to some inner ear disorder?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Quentin. I think you'll notice in the list, so we do have the audiology and the ENT type bodies only for the UK, but for exactly these people interested in vestibular function. I think our clinical thoughts are probably slightly different to that, but certainly there's already embedded protocols and techniques from that group. Denise, did you want to come in again?
Yeah, just to say that eye tracking is also used for visual fields testing. So maybe we need to be specific about what remits we're using eye tracking for.
So I think, again, this brings us, sorry, Rash, I see your hand, just to redraw attention on, these are kind of the questions that we need answered, isn't it? So are we thinking about writing a clinical standard for eye tracking used in the diagnosis of nystagmus? Or are we thinking about writing our first one, eye tracking for the use of visual field assessment? And in a way, crystallizing what is going to be the most useful test case for which we write our first standard will be governed by what our survey discovers and so on and so forth. Rasha first, I think, and then Matt.
Well, I was just commenting on Quentin's question because a part of the analysis of the eye tracking and the eye trackers is the pupil. So, I mean, we're not focusing mainly on that, but I mean, it's among the data that they analyze. So if it's like within the study we're doing, then I think it should be included, like with the saccades and the other data. And they relate it also sometimes to cognitive focusing and stuff like that. So I mean, the whole data of the eye tracker, if it's would be useful, we shouldn't exclude, I mean, the pupil because it's there. I'm just commenting on that.
Thank you. And Matt?
Yeah, just following up on Rasha's point was that, yeah, also you get head tracking data from eye trackers as well, and often that can be useful. But the reason I had my hand up was to point out that in a previous meeting, we discussed how these standards might be organized. And I know, Ruth, in ISCET, it's organized by the methodology, right? It's either VEP or ERG. You're talking about what's the technology that's being used. Well, in eye tracking, it's the same technology being applied in different situations. So thus far, the decision has been to order these by the clinical diagnosis that's trying to be made. So each condition will have a different protocol associated with it, and that could also include additional clinical tests you might do besides the eye tracking to augment that data. So that might be part of the conversation. Yeah,
or certainly reference them as being additional needs. Just noting Hoover in the chat, you've noted might want to see what the Perimetry Society has. Absolutely, and please feel free to add pertinent details from the Imaging Perimetry Society, IPS, to the document if that's pertinent. Thank you. Gemma.
Yeah, I think all of these suggestions are really valuable, and they're exactly what hopefully the survey will capture. Who's out there, who's doing stuff clinically, and what are they doing? So all of these ideas, absolutely. I think if the survey could capture that, A, to kind of find out who else might be interested in the group, but B, to kind of guide who's doing what and what's going to be useful, are absolutely the point of the survey.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks, Gemma. I think that is really good. And I think probably the main issue picking up here is that our questions that we're asking need to be tailored or presented as a hierarchy, so that that is the most important thing that we pull out. You know, what is the condition where people see the best value of an eye tracker in a clinical setting? And I think once we understand that, then that's going to help direct the efforts. So just coming back to the committee. So given what we've heard from Gemma and Denise, it sounds very much like, Gemma, your university has obviously provided advice already. It sounds very much like discussions with your information governance teams about how to handle and manage the data is a good next step. Yep.
Yeah, happy to do that. If people are supportive that this is what we should focus our initial energy on, I'm very happy to kind of find out what we need to do with the data and how we need to structure it. And I'm happy to put it through our ethics at the university, and work with others on exactly what that survey says or asks. Happy to do that.
That's wonderful. Gemma, and everyone else here, just thinking about manpower to put to this task, person power to put to this task. Do any of you have trainees or individuals you can think of working with you just now who might be able to dedicate some hours to pulling together a first draft of a survey for us all to approve? I know we've got a lot of material sitting in our collaborative document, but as yet it's some way away from something that could be uploaded as a form to REDCap. Anyone identify suitable people?
I can suggest we could potentially also put this out via the mailing group, because of course we've only got a third of the world here today. So
Yeah.
you know, we would need to to allow everyone to potentially get involved.
That's good. Can we take that as an action then to basically we're advertising, yeah, amongst individuals for people working with them just now who might be looking for projects to help CVs, whatever experience, and see if we can pull together maybe a small group of people to work with Gemma and her team to take forward the survey. And then the other aspect that we need to do is from the body of our members is to pull together a small team of people. Sorry, children's hospitals are noisy places. And pull together a small team of people to support Gemma, like a subcommittee who are dedicated to working on this survey. And again, obviously we've got 3 zones of the world, and this is just maybe 1/3, maybe a little bit more than that. So how would we propose going? I mean, apart from anyone that just wanted to volunteer just now, and Denise, you kindly said that you'll be able to maybe offer some expertise. Obviously the extent to which people can give time is up to them and what they can afford. But if you have expertise to offer, then please do volunteer, Denise.
I do normally have several medical students who are very enthusiastic in looking for projects that I could potentially offer up for Gemma. Gemma, I don't know where you're based.
I'm in Sheffield.
Not that that should matter. I was also going to say that there is a small fee for using REDCap. It's like £500 per year to kind of register your study, at least in Bristol. It might be different than Sheffield. But we have to think about that as well. There will be some costs.
Well, I'm happy to be involved on the subcommittee as well, and I may be being asked to come up with MSc project titles soon, and that would provide some funding. So there's that as well. If we could pool resources.
Thank you in the chat, Frederick. You've said we can set it up for free in the sense that in America, anything in America is free. Someone is paying for it, but not me. Nice. Do you want to explain for us, Frederick?
This is in reference to REDCap. So setting up a REDCap, the administration of REDCap is trickier I'm at Seattle Children's Research Institute, which is part of the hospital. And so administration is trickier from the standpoint of having multiple groups kind of come in and manage the back end. But I think it is also possible, and I've seen that happen. One of the things that may be of value is if we just create a document and just kind of allow us all to kind of drop in the type of resources and or expertise that we could bring, and things that maybe we're willing to do. Also our bandwidth, which is probably is extremely low for everybody here.
That's a nice suggestion, Frederick. Any reason we can't simply add this to the current document at the end, our resources available type section, and maybe populate it a bit with what we've already agreed here? And then this can be...
Unless you want to keep this very clean.
No, I mean, I think the current document is already quite scattered and broad for the very purpose that we wanted it to be as broad as possible. I think it will be refined considerably by the time it gets to an actual survey. Yeah, everyone happy to... Yep.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Good, okay. Great, so that's something for us all to think about. Bodies on the ground. Frederick, yes, please.
Oh, would you be opposed to, if we're going to use this document, for me to add some organizational glue to the document?
Oh, please do. Yeah, I think maybe some people joined after I had already said that. Yeah, this is an open document for all members to add their thoughts and contributions. So if you've got any of the subheadings where you feel you've got value to add, then type away. We do ask, please don't delete anything that's there, so that can get tidied up later. Thank you. Okay, have we any other particular issues we want to cover about finalising the survey? Matt, yes.
I just wanted to raise the issue of the disparate nature of the data we're going to get from it. If it's going to be for publication, and we're going to send it to individual clinicians, professional bodies on behalf of their members, manufacturers, and potentially regulatory bodies as well, and anyone else who may have some interest in it, we're going to get a very wide range of information back. You know, the question, how many of your patients do you do eye tracking on, isn't going to apply to everyone. So I wonder if this falls under the remit of a kind of qualitative analysis, and if we know, or if there's anyone here who has some expertise on how to draw that sort of stuff together. Yeah, and the other thing is I should mention is that at a previous meeting, there was a suggestion of actually running focus groups as part of this. I don't know if that might be a bit much, but it is something that was raised. So I wanted to just make sure it was repeated.
Any thoughts on focus groups? Gemma?
So I have a little bit of qualitative experience. My first thought to that would be, let's start with the survey. If we feel we need a kind of a deeper understanding of some of the issues within it, then a focus group might be the way forward to kind of explore it in more detail or from a different angle. But I think it's, I think as a starting point, trying to find out who's out there, what they're doing is kind of probably okay with the survey, but I wouldn't want to discount something qualitative like interviews or focus groups, but it doesn't feel like it's the right place to start, is my view on that.
Thanks, Gemma. That sounds sensible. Denise?
I think the fact that this is a survey means it's qualitative research. It's not going to be quantitative. You know, it depends on who responds, and not everyone's going to respond. And so it's going to be selective anyway. And the type of analysis that you do on it is going to be mainly qualitative, thematic type of analysis. Even if you ask very specific questions, some of these questions have open answers where you'd have free text, and therefore you need to do a kind of thematic analysis of those. So because I'm going through this at the moment, I know it's quite time consuming even to analyze survey responses where you have open-ended questions. So we need to be very clear about what exactly we're trying to get out of this survey. What is the actual purpose of the survey? Because if we're just trying to find out, you know, who's out there, who's using eye tracking, that's actually very open-ended. But if we want to ask some specifics about how they're kind of applying eye tracking in their practice, then maybe we can sort of mix that up with more closed, directed questions that are easier to analyze generally.
So Denise, that almost sounds like you're talking almost about a nested survey where after a certain set of questions where you're establishing who is speaking and why, you then ask, are you using it clinically? And if the answer to that is no, which might be the case, for example, I suppose for a manufacturer or for a particular individual, then survey done. But if you are using it clinically, there's then another integrated set of questions which are just about its clinical use. Might be useful to separate out the two. And I guess, sorry, carry on.
Do you think that clinicians who don't use eye tracking will even try to complete the survey? Because I don't think we'll get that denominator. If you're trying to work out, you know, what proportion of ophthalmologists use eye tracking, I don't think we'll get that. We'll get the people who are interested in eye tracking who'll say, yes, I use it, and this is what proportion of my time I use it in. But we won't get the people who don't use it saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. And in fact, we had this discussion just very briefly, Matt and Rasha and I, when we were hearing that the purpose of the survey is not to find out who is out there that doesn't use eye tracking but would like to. That's not possible. But since the groups that we've already identified will include people who are, for example, undertaking non-clinical research, for example, or may include manufacturers, then they by default won't have an answer to clinical use questions, I guess. So maybe a way of narrowing the group a little bit. Which raises the other point, Suhaid, I see your hand just coming to you, about how we phrase the questions in terms of, you know, should we be making question number one, for example, at the moment is sitting up saying, what proportion of your clinical appointments typically involve use of an eye tracker? So do we give, you know, 5 possible answers, every single one through to none at all, so that we can quantify to an extent, but also leave free text with each of those so that we can gain more understanding of who's answering. And the way that we structure those questions might determine to what extent we can do some quantitative understanding of the responses, as well as more qualitative stuff. Suhaid.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much. My name is Suhaid. I'm an ophthalmologist. I currently advise a biomed company called Volbitech that has an eye tracker, and they have been expanding into both ophthalmology and urology recently. And I'm following up on the topics that they are addressing in different organizations in different countries in Europe, including UK, Italy, Spain, and others. So the issue is that I asked a certain question concerning the technical requirements towards an eye tracker, and whether there should be a minimal, you know, capability of such a device in order for it to perform clinically. So we cannot just base on just take our phones and do some eye tracking with that, although there are so many apps nowadays with available capabilities and so on and so on. But nonetheless, if we are to use this in clinical practice, it must have a weight of some kind, and it must have some minimal requirements or specifications that allow it to function as a device that could produce reliable, dependable, and repeatable data. And that is unfortunately all related to the technical specifications of an eye tracker in most cases. Yes, of course, there are some mishaps on the side of the patients, maybe misinformation, malunderstanding, but nonetheless, if explained properly to the patient, then the test should run properly, and the results should be repeatable, dependable, and in the end, hopefully correlated with the clinical data. So this was my major question. Unfortunately, I didn't attend the previous meeting. It's my first time. Hopefully, it won't be the last. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on this. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Suhad. And I can see Matt's already made some responses in the chat here, which I think are very helpful. One way of thinking about it might be through the lens of ISCET, where we specify what must be achieved by a test. We don't make requirements of the manufacturers of our equipment that it must be this particular, it must be able to achieve this in the end. And if it can achieve that, then they can describe their equipment as ISEF compliant. Is that a fair description, Quentin? And this is
It would be it would be if we had some kind of classical or standard method on which we can depend
absolutely, which is the purpose of this group. Yes. Yeah. If we define the method, then manufacturers are required to deliver equipment which can deliver the method. And that's the quality process. Sorry, Quentin.
Yes, I agree with that. You know, there is the the trade-off between being, prescriptive enough that you can have results from two different manufacturers and kind of be able to say, yes, they told me the same thing, but not being so prescriptive that you prevent any further innovations in the field. So that is the trade-off between, setting these standards, right? You want to be able to, compare results taken in Glasgow and in the United States. And so therefore you need to have some kind of standardization, but you don't want to be too tight that you prevent any kind of innovations from happening in the future.
Totally agree.
So does that help address your question?
Oh yeah. I'm just like hearing your thoughts, touching base, finding out what your thoughts are leading you towards. Of course, we have a constructed approach towards this topic, and we're working on it in order to reach that level of precision and dependability. But nonetheless, taking into consideration the thoughts of all my colleagues and all over the world would be of benefit to me and to the company itself. Guide me to a proper approach and guide me to a proper path. Let's say that.
Great. Matt, did you want to come in?
Oh, yeah, just going to elaborate on the point about whether the specifications that ISET come up with are disease-based or just one general standard for eye tracking. And I think that, thinking of examples, like let's say that you're interested in anti-saccade error rate. Well, you don't actually need high temporal or spatial precision to do that. Whereas if you want to look at saccade latencies, looking for a change in Huntington's or something like that, then that does become relevant. So that was, I think, part of the rationale for making these things specific to the disease. So you could get away with different types of hardware depending on what you're trying to diagnose.
Thank you, Matt.
Can I just comment
yes,
on what?
Please.
Yeah, just considering that this is a new era, not a new era, it's a new topic nonetheless, right? So it's not a technique that we use on a daily basis in our practice, and it's not something that we have proven 200% or 100% that it's clinically evident that these results will indicate so and so diseases, and that's why even if such a device like some researchers might collect a certain data, for example, and display the results as, for example, there is a necessity of limiting themselves only to the evaluation of, let's say, smooth pursuit in a certain disease, then it is to combine with so and so and so. So it's kind of a like it's like I don't know how to call it, but it's still a huge field to explore, and I still think that we are still at the beginning, where we can still set the pace, or let's say the base of that growing evolution to this diagnostic method. And that's why I was thinking that maybe it could be more specialty oriented than it is disease dependent, disease oriented. That way, at least we can hear from the side of, for example, the neurologist, how well does the pupillometry give them good results that they can clinically correlate, and not limit ourselves to the, for example, ophthalmologist, or whether to limit ourselves to ENT doctors. So there should be a vaster and a wider a group of specialists that could give their thoughts also on the essence, or let's say the validity, or the results that are being received with the help of eye trackers. And that's why I was thinking that having some kind of restrictions, or like to mandate them to have certain technical specifications in order to achieve that role would be maybe a good step towards that. You know, like, okay, you should have, like, let's say an infrared cam that can do like minimum of, let's say, 300 frames per second, or let's say 100 frames per second. Then the screens that you have should have like, for example, a refresh rate of not less than 60 hertz, for example, you know. And then the tracking method should include not only glint but also pupil, for example, detection. For example, just, you know, giving out samples just to, you know, suggest my idea. So that's the only thing that I wanted to like deliver, this notion or this thought, so that we can work maybe and guide those that are manufacturing eye trackers, so that they don't invest huge amounts in eye trackers that would be deemed useless based on the survey, or based on this committee's you know, in the future. Maybe it'll become a golden standard. Your thoughts and your decisions might become a golden standard for other clinicians to use in the future when they are working with eye trackers. So we have to look ahead. We have to be quite precise about our steps, and to take everything into consideration when it comes to, you know, eye tracking as a device and a method to clinically diagnose different diseases and disorders. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. And I think that, you know, as you say, I think this group and the much wider group have already put really quite an enormous amount of expertise and time into considering many of those aspects that you raise. And very helpfully, you restated lots of those. I think that we're ready to take any comments in response to that, or are we? I'm just aware that time is marching on to the last 15 minutes of our slot. Okay.
If I can just like sum up what I concluded regarding the survey for Gemma. Like, if from this minutes of this meeting, we will start creating the subgroup. This is for Europe and Africa, but also we will, of course, it will be open for other people from other the other regions to join. And I think that we might all be happy, because Gemma started this, that we proceed with the ethical approval from Sheffield, from where she is, and then this subgroup will proceed. And then if we need help from like what suggested, like from other people, like medical students or not, we can have people in. But I mean, in my humble experience, we had a similar survey that is still just closed a couple of days ago with the ESLR, which is the International Society for Research on Low Vision, and we were 6 that were running this. The ethical approval was City University, so I can endorse the conclusion that we only need 1 ethical approval for, and the Sheffield will be in charge of the data, and then I mean, if we have regular meetings, the subgroup could be enough to run this. I mean, with some dedicated time. But then if we need to add people from outside also, I think I mean, that's what I had running in my head. And I think having the survey first would be good, and then the focus groups is a step 2, just to keep things forward. That's my conclusion, but of course it's open for everyone's input. But that's my got to go point.
I think that's, I think it's sensible to kind of have this, so the subcommittees kind of dealing with the survey in parallel, and then perhaps these meetings can focus a little bit more on moving towards actually producing standard protocols. I think we should definitely take on board Suhad's comments as well about you know, how those things are structured, and whether we're looking at standards based on disease, or maybe you could have our overarching standards per as you've suggested, per discipline. You know, so a neurologist would be expected to use this. Maybe that would fall out of, if you look at the range of diseases a particular clinician is going to look at, maybe that would come from that. But I think there were some valid points there which we should keep note of. And when we meet again perhaps we could have like an update from the survey study, but be starting to think about how we can start to produce those standards, or at least what steps we would take when we are ready to do that.
So just thinking about in terms of recruiting more individuals and their expertise to the survey subcommittee, are we happy to leave that for the next regional meetings and just to repeat this discussion and to make a plea for people to contribute their time and their expertise? Excuse me.
So that might take a little while if we were to do that, because we're having at the moment, the next meeting, the Americas region is scheduled for 3 weeks from today, and then the next Australasia and Asia meeting would be 3 weeks post that. We could send this out via the mailing group. Everybody has, so all the regions have been discussing the survey so far. So I would suggest, if we want to get things moving, we just communicate with the people who are on the mailing list and say who wants to be involved in this. The notes about this meeting will be on the website. So that's my suggestion, just to move it forward.
Excellent. Okay, that's good. Are we happy, everyone, that we take that as an action? There'll be a specific recruitment email looking for additional expertise or time to devote to the survey subcommittee. Great. Okay.
As an incentive to that, should we suggest that people who actively contribute to that survey could end up being authors on a paper that comes out of that, so we can hopefully get people to be involved in that way, or is that preempting it a bit too much at this stage?
So are we concluding? Are we happy to conclude that this is, at least at this stage, being designed for publication?
Yeah.
Is that something everyone's comfortable with? Any dissenting voices? Okay, thanks, Rasha. Any dissenting voices? Anyone saying no, let's forget the publication, just get the data?
I think we should be open to the possibility that we get the data and we realize there's no way to structure this in a sensible way, so it ends up being in a publication. But
but the intention from now is that it is published. So in that case, I think it's really reasonable to say the recruiting email that active subcommittee members will be co-authors on any publications, and that there is a plan to publish. Yeah.
In that case, it should be moved relatively soon, I think, to something formal. If there needs to be an IRB at some institute, that has to be submitted. So will that be Sheffield? I think that can make sense.
Yeah, I think Gemma has agreed that that's the right way to go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, if others would like to take it on, I'm not precious about it, but I'm very happy to kind of take it forward as another discussion to say this is what we want to do. Let's talk practicalities about which system we use to collect the data and where it's stored, and I can have that discussion in Sheffield. But as I say, if others would prefer to do that at their institution, I'm open to that, not precious about it.
I don't see a flurry of hands, Gemma.
It's just I don't know if I feel good about you having to eat 500 pounds of costs to set it up. That's the main thing. That, I mean, if there's, like some having a membership actually could be helpful in this standpoint, because like then we can like generate a little bit to just move things along, and I think our institutions generally accept this. But then that's also complicated from the standpoint of like who's actually taking the money, right? And is it actually like an organization? So these are some things that could be thought of.
Yes, Gemma, and yeah.
I think my first port of call is to have a discussion about the practicalities of it in Sheffield. We use Google as a university, so it may be that a Google questionnaire is another option that's free, but I think I'm just going to have to go back to them and say what kind of infrastructure have we got that's either free or has a cost, and we'll just have to make a decision. I'll have to bring that back to the group. I'm imagining GDPR issues with various different setups, so I think we'll just have to find out what's possible, come back to the group, and we'll make a decision on the way forward and whether we use a freely available something or whether we pay for it in some way, and if we do, where we get that money from. I think we're just going to have to find out.
Okay, I'm trying not to be completely entranced by Frederick's cat, who's now sitting on his shoulder. But Gemma, I also, and this is what I understand from my institution, institutional access to RedCap is free if you work for a non-profit, which is the NHS. for example. So that it may be that the cost is not an issue if red cap is our choice. But yeah, thank you, Frederick, for that input, and Gemma and Rasha, and then Suad. I'm sorry, I'm really looking at
Okay, don't worry about it.
Rasha
about it.
first. Thank you.
Well, was it on the agenda that we set a timing for the next meeting of this sub group that would work on the survey?
I think
The date was set by Robert, but that could be used for the next main meeting, or it could be used for the subcommittee, or it could.
I mean the subcommittee. I mean
So-
subcommittee, because Gemma, I think, will have to be there, and then I mean to take it forward from here, not to have to wait for the next general meeting. As you mentioned, everyone will be emailed the minutes of this meeting from today, and then we can start moving in parallel, because it doesn't have to be. It could be even reported in the next meeting. That's my suggestion.
so. Gemma, I think you already have in your subcommittee Fred, Denise, Matt, and Rasha. There may be more joining you, but that would seem enough for you to start setting up future dates, which future members could join if they're able to, but certainly be maintained in the loop with anything that happens. But I think it's an excellent point of Rasha's that a next meeting date in the diary is a good way of just keeping momentum under things. And of course, you could be free to use, if you want, the 15th of February slot, which has already been set aside for the Americas region. That's at 2 p.m. EST, which I think is about 7 p.m. UK time, maybe 8. But you are not under any obligation to use that, of course. Is that fair, Matt?
Absolutely, yeah. We just had that date in the diary so that if we decided we needed to use it, it's there. Alternatively, it could be the next meeting of the whole group if there's a need for us to meet at that point. Yeah. Great.
And just to flag from the chat that Andreas has pointed out, linesurvey.org is another potential resource to use. Perhaps we could capture these in the document. Great. Suad, did you want to come in now?
Yes, I had one question on red cap. You mentioned that it's strictly to it's accessible, free to non-profit organizations strictly located in the UK, or is it just any non-profit organization strictly UK?
I think it's universal.
Oh, great.
Software and support are available at no charge to non-profit organizations that join the consortium.
All right, great.
It looks like they're funded by NIH, which is American. So, yeah, probably fine.
Okay. Right, we have 7 minutes to deal with closing items, which are largely practical, I think. So there's a couple of eye movement meetings coming up, I'm sure you know about. There's ETRA, which is in Glasgow in early June, Glasgow in the UK. And then there's ECEM, which is at the end of summer, the end of August in Ireland. And the question for discussion is, should ISCET have a presence at either of those? What might that presence look like? A symposium, just some awareness material, sort of a recruitment drive? And what are people's thoughts about that? Matt?
Well, I would suggest, having been to ECEM a few times in the past, there's often a clinical section, a short, a symposium on clinical eye tracking, and it's usually quite brief. But they have put out a request for symposium ideas, and ISCET could potentially just host that section of it. The main reason being to simply increase our presence, so people know that we're out here. So I think, yeah, if that seems a good idea, if there's somebody who's going to be at those meetings, which presumably there will be.
Yeah, just a quick poll. Anyone here intending to attend either of those meetings? Frederick, yes? No? Okay. And Frederick, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so for ETRA, there isn't typically a clinical kind of a clinical work group, but there really could be. The official work group call has closed, but there can be like a kind of a small meeting of interested parties. They do this for issues around diversity, and I imagine that something could be done around clinical applications as well. There's also a late breaking work submission proposal. A full disclosure, I'm one of the chairs of that group, and it takes like 2-page abstracts, and so that would be it's a decent place to just kind of showcase some things. It's in Glasgow, so like very easy for some of you. My cat is freaking out, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, it's just actually about 2 blocks away from my house, but unfortunately I'll be on holiday, so I won't be able to go. Is there scope for example, a 2-page abstract discussing the formation of ISCET?
I think that would be perfectly like a very, very welcome. March would be around March, mid-March would be the deadline for something like that.
Okay, maybe worth thinking about for this group. We can add that to the minutes and then pick it up with, it's quite tight for time. So again, this might be a second item for the next mass round mail, as well as recruiting to, or perhaps the best thing to be try and identify a lead now who would be happy to pull together that abstract. Rasha, are you nodding to say that's a good idea? Or are you nodding to say
Yeah,
I would like to do that?
I did submit the late work for last year. It was in Germany. It's not a lot of work, but I think I'm not sure how we will present it. I mean, because I need to pass through the requirements. Like it's a poster basically. So will we just present our society in it? Like if it's doable, I mean it's doable. I can, not alone, of course. I mean we can agree and do that, but I still cannot like basically we'll just present our society. That's it.
It feels to make sense that it's a narrative describing the need for it and what actions we've taken so far and what actions we plan to take in the future, and what models we've followed and blah blah blah. I think there's probably enough material there, and maybe Rasha, if you were kind enough to offer a first draft, then we could co-author on the basis of contributions to help modify the draft that arrives. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah, would someone want to volunteer with me?
Well, Rasha, I'm happy to help provide the narrative on the history of how this was, what we've done so far.
Yeah, I'm happy to join in.
Yeah.
And
have a slight conflict, I think.
yeah, I do have a conflict, but there's other chairs who would review. We've already have a conflict of interest process in place. One thing is that someone will have to present, and of course, like Rasha, if you were going to draft this, it would be like amazing if you were the person presenting it.
Yeah, I'll just have a second look on the dates, but I would like to. I was anyway considering going to ETRA because it was fruitful last year, and it was really good. This meeting between the technical people and the medical people. I really feel this is fruitful for the future work.
Just one quick suggestion then, Rasha. If everyone consented just now to put their videos on and we take a screen grab of this, you could use this to illustrate your poster. If anyone doesn't consent, you can simply leave your video off or just let us know, and we don't need to do that. But I think
the videos are of course online for all of these meetings already.
Okay, just a thought, just to try and illustrate the collaborative nature of it and hopefully give us a bit of context. Great. Okay, so with 1 minute left to go, we had talked about the next meeting. Matt, are you feeling that holding on to the February 15th date for the Americas region is too soon, or are you wanting to simply run that past with Robert Alexander and let him feed back to the main group if there's a change?
Yeah, maybe if we, Rasha, if we get the notes sent to Robert, we can decide whether it's needed this soon. I think the main thing is until we've got a little bit of progress on the survey study, It may be premature to be talking too much about standards, but then there is the issue of like we're going to have to come up with protocols of how we collaboratively decide on, you know, what goes into these standards and so on. So there could be scope to do a bit of work on that in parallel as well. So maybe, I don't know, what do others think here? Is there value in getting on with that now, or should we wait until we've got the survey study, you know, almost submitted and early results in? Not sure.
No, yeah, I can see arguments both ways.
We could always just delay a little bit. Obviously, it's been 3 months since the last meeting here, and that's why we started to say, let's try and make them every 3 weeks just to keep the ball rolling. But again, it might be that we just need to delay it by another month, so we've got some solid progress on the survey to report back.
Maybe that's a plan. So you can feedback with Robert on that then, Matt.
I'll liaise with Robert to pick a date that's a bit later on, maybe another month on. Yeah.
Excellent. That's wonderful. So that just leaves us with any other business. So I won't go round, but just please raise your hand if you have anything. Yes, Fred.
Just to flag this for everyone, I had added a conflict information set for people who are involved in this. And I don't know, Matt, if this is conflicting with any type of organizational process you've already set up. But I thought that might be a nice way of linking between the contributions set and also anyone who has kind of contributions that they could add to the survey. There's a little section where you can drop it in towards the end of that section about the survey.
Great, thank you.
That's great. Yeah, Fred, I noticed that you were adding these. Well, I didn't know who it was actually. You were anonymous something or other. But yeah, thank you very much for adding those in. That's really helpful. So in the absence of anything else, we can close the meeting at a minute past. And many thanks everybody for your time and your constructive and helpful comments. Really appreciated.
Thank you.